In 1968, another organization was formed. It was called the Club of Rome. Interesting group. The Club of Rome is sort of an egalitarian group aimed at unity and solidarity in Europe. The Club of Rome hopes to unify the entire globe. And they have a report entitled Regionalized and Adaptive Model for Global World System. It actually divides the world, the entire globe, into 10 political economic regions. Their stated goal is a one world government and a new world order. The Club of Rome was formed in 1968. It didn't make it on the map until 1972. It had a publication called Limits to Growth. It was sort of an environmental treatise that would limit growth of developed nations. Independent countries that are strong are a real hindrance to globalism, so much so that the environmental movement was aimed at undermining the United States. A word about the global warming issue. First of all, I realize that there are people from different political cloths represented here today. This is a fact. 1,000 years ago, it was warmer on planet Earth than it is today. Undisputable. The Middle Ages were warmer than it is now. 800 years ago, temperatures were higher in what was called the medieval warm period. Over the next few centuries, it got colder. 400 years ago, we experienced something called the Little Ice Age, when temperatures were much colder than it is today. And then over the last 100 years, the Earth has warmed, but not because of human activity. It's because of the sun. How do we know this? Well, the polar ice caps on Mars are melting, and they have no SUVs there. Imagine that. Imagine that. See, the increase of carbon dioxide on Earth is not causative, as Al Gore would have you believe, but is the result of the increased activity of the sun. By the way, the greatest contributor of greenhouse gas or hot air on the Earth is Al Gore. That's not true. It's the ocean. Just the facts. People, please, just the facts. The hotter the sun is, the more greenhouse gas is emitted by the ocean. And so the increase in CO2 in the atmosphere is a result of a sun that's increasing in activity. There were times in the Earth's history when the carbon dioxide levels, CO2, greenhouse gases, were 10 times what they are today. And so don't let anybody tell you that your car is causing global warming. Humans have no ability. The inconvenient truth for religious environmentalists is that humans are insignificant when it comes to climate change. Here's something funny. Of all the carbon dioxide that's released into the atmosphere, humans contribute only 12%. Animals contribute 14%. The activists are hoping to change the diets of livestock to curb what they feel is global warming flatulence. And I am not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. They really believe the farts of cows are driving this earth into a terrible state. Read about it in the newspaper. Leonardo DiCaprio wants you all to believe that we have dire consequences. The human race will become extinct on the earth if we don't start riding mopeds. They want to stop and change the diets of cows and horses. Professing to be wise, they became fools. That would be ironic, wouldn't it? If the environmentalists all over the world said we need to start eating cows. Eat hamburgers to save the environment. No, of course not. It's a religion, is what it is. It worships Mother Earth, Gaia, in their mind, but that's another story altogether. Climate control was actually born as a catalyst by the Club of Rome for global unity. It grew into a political campaign and then became an ideological bandwagon whose primary goal is to weaken the United States. That's right. The United States stands in the way just by being an independent nation. I'm not hailing the praises of the United States. I'm just saying that as an independent nation, it stands in the way of global unity because everything's supposed to be centralized in Europe in the end. And the whole Kyoto Protocol that Bush wouldn't sign, the reason he wouldn't sign it is not because the world is not getting warmer, because it is. But it's not human beings that are causing it. It's just a fact. The reason is because Kyoto calls for the punishment of the United States with heavy penalties for emissions, but it exempts China, which will have more emissions than the U.S. in 2 years. It exempts them completely. It exempts Brazil and India and other nations that are pumping CO2 in the environment. But that's not really even the issue as far as a scientific standpoint goes. In effect, what would happen is the United States would become the primary financial support for the United Nations. The United Nations would collect billions of dollars in fines from the United States while exempting all these other developing nations, essentially crippling our economy, weakening our autonomy, and paving the way for a last days scenario where the United States' role is more of a supporting role than a dominant role. We don't take a lead role in the last days. And so the global warming issue actually dates back to the early 70s when the Club of Rome published its book, Limits to Growth.